Hi, I'm Carolyn Anktel. Welcome to my studio. I'm a visual artist, and the instruments of my trade are watercolor, ink, graphite, and story. In today's video, I'm going to take you on a retrospective show and tell of sorts. I've mentioned in previous videos that I was actively discouraged from pursuing an art career by my parents. So we'll begin this tour of my art at about the time when I got more intentional about it in my later years. And we'll continue up to present day. So with that, let's get started. I would have been about 19 or 20 when I abandoned my dream of pursuing a career in art. When I returned to it in 2014, I was in my 50s. This is a sampling of some of the work that I was producing at that time. Some of my proportions are off, like the hands in this piece. Looking back, I feel that the work I was producing is about the level of a 19 or 20-year-old. I was doing a lot of exploration and experimentation, including some lettering. In 2015, I was still experimenting, and I would get some things wrong, like the number of fingers on a hand. At about the same time, I was doing small illustrations that I would reproduce into calendar form. They were great little studies and allowed for a lot of experimentation. I was selling some of my artwork, and I was also receiving a few commissions, which really served to encourage me. I produced quite a bit of work in 2015 and was really drawn to the human form. I was still learning how watercolor worked, and I was experimenting with ink and different mediums like watercolor pencils. Gradually, over time, my abilities began to improve and my artistic style began to emerge. In 2016, the work continued, and I began to experiment with character development a little more. While my ability to depict the human form improved, I still struggled to create backgrounds that were interesting. It was in 2016 that I started to play with conceptual ideas as well. 2016 was the one and only time I participated in Inktober, and while I didn't continue for the entire month, I do think that the constant practice did help to move my artwork forward. Not all of what I created that month was great. In fact, some of it was downright terrible. But overall, I think it was a great experience. This remains one of my favorite pieces from 2017, even though the proportions are a bit off. This was the year that I really let my imagination run wild, and I began to introduce a little bit of humor into my work. This was also the year that I started to play with the fantastical and to introduce a sense of childlike wonder into my artwork that continues to the present day. My work was beginning to get a little bit more complex, both in design and with the use of watercolor. I didn't do a lot of sketching in 2018, and what I did do was downright weird. And here's the one and only self-portrait I've ever done. I stopped dating my work, so I think it was in 2019 that I created a series of limited edition prints I called the Storybook Collection. They were based on strong female characters and also include a literal story, short story that goes with them. All of these are still currently available on my website. This was a particularly prolific time in my art career because my husband and I were living apart while we waited for our house to sell, and that continued for about 2 years. My art journals kind of suffered during that time. I still use them for experimentation, but I wasn't creating anything that was particularly noteworthy in my opinion. In 2022, I launched into another long-term project, a daily practice, but I just can't seem to stick with these. In addition to the work that I was doing in my art journals, I was continuing to produce prints and offering them for sale on my website. I continue to use my art journals as places where I can experiment with techniques and materials and concepts. Sometimes I'll take what I create in my art journals and turn them into greeting cards or prints. These are my most recent works of art, and I'm really pleased with the progress I've made over the last 10 years. This has just been a sample of the artwork I've created in that time. If you'd like to see more of my artwork, I've included a link to my website in the show notes. I hope you found today's video encouraging and that it gives you the incentive to continue to pursue your dreams. If you have subscribed or liked my videos, I sincerely thank you. It means a lot to me.